This is I found this just amazing how much the right wing is trying to justify the new curriculum in Florida regarding
how bad slavery was.
No, not how bad slavery was, Matt. I mean, that sounds a little woke.
The benefits, I guess.
Can you chill out here? It's about how there were good and bad sides to slavery. On the bad side, it was, you know, the enslavement of people, the killing of them, the torture of them, the fact that they weren't paid for their labor, the whippings, the rapings, the forced separation of families. Right. That's the bad. The good is, you know, it was like going to trade school, basically. Like, they learned a ton of skills.
Silver Linings Plantation.
Yeah.
Here is Fox's The Five discussing this and raising some interesting points about the Holocaust. Yes.
Fun.
Do you think that she read the whole thing and just decided to cherry pick something?
I do think that she read the whole thing.
I should say that they're referring to Kamala Harris's response to this Florida curriculum.
Do you think that she read the whole thing and just decided to cherry pick something?
I do think that she read the whole thing, and I think that it's an incredibly complex piece. When you look at the 191 passages, you have some good, and frankly, I'm just fundamentally uncomfortable with the sentence that blacks benefited at all from this. And you know, it made me think, as someone, obviously I'm not black, but I'm Jewish. Would someone say about the Holocaust, for instance, that there were some benefits for Jews, right? While they were hanging out in concentration camps, you learned a strong work ethic, right? Maybe you learned a new skill.
Did you ever read Man's Search for Meaning? Viktor Frankl talks about how you had to survive in a concentration camp by having skills. You had to be useful. Utility kept you alive.
We're also talking about middle schoolers here. And
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it for 1 second. First off, this is, I mean, so twisted. First off, like, even Gutfeld doesn't even get what the whole dynamic is. It's not that black people had skills and that helped them have less like problematic slave lives in some fashion.
They got by or whatever.
Yes, they got by. That is not the point. Isn't that the point? Is that you are arguing that by being in a concentration camp, you learned some skill. Maybe you learned Morse code, or maybe you learned how to communicate, by blinking, or maybe, I don't know, you learned to live on an extremely restricted caloric diet. This is like to say that was, a personal benefit.
Yeah.
I mean,
I learned how to sleep on, without a mattress. And to this day, that has really served me well when I'm staying over a friend's house.
I've not read Viktor Frankl's book on the concentration camps, but this is from the Wikipedia. It doesn't seem to be the sort of message that Gutfeld is suggesting, which is Frankl identifies 3 psychological reactions experienced by all inmates to one degree or another. 1, shock during the initial admission phase to the camp. 2, apathy after becoming accustomed to camp existence, in which the inmate values only that which helps himself and his friends survive. And 3, reactions of depersonalization, moral deformity, bitterness, and disillusionment if he survives and is liberated.
If they weren't in the gas chambers.
Right.
I mean, I just, the idea that some Jews in concentration camps use their skills as survival mechanisms to provide themselves as useful for the Nazis that were murdering them in mass is not a benefit. It is like a condemnation of the barbarity, because that was all they had at their disposal to survive a genocide.
Discussion of was it capos?
I literally I know we've seen a ton of really horrible stuff on Fox News, but this is I'm putting this in the top 5 in 2023. Like, this isn't what I cannot believe what I just heard out of Greg.
This is so lazy. It's just Gutfeld, just like it's so lazy. But
it's us, like, the white supremacy of America, and like they've gone over the sort of line on this highway, and then they're into like that part where you like, and it wakes you up. That's how far we've gone into like defending white supremacy here.
Well, that's the thing, is that, yeah, he's completely gone off the rails just because of the knee jerk. Like, we have to, in some way, cannot concede that even this is too far. We can't concede anything. And here, continue.
Right, while they were hanging out in concentration camps, you learned a strong work ethic, right? Maybe you learned a new skill.
Did you ever read Man's Search for Meaning? Vic Frankl talks about how you had to survive in a concentration camp by having skills. You had to be useful. Utility kept you alive.
We're also talking about middle schoolers here. And there's a lot of concern about what age people are prepared to understand complex issues. I'm not sure that 12 is the right age to start hearing things like, and when you were enslaved here in America.
What about gender?
I also just I think about how there were many Jews that fled Nazi Germany before, as this degradation started to happen, before the concentration camps were up and running, but many of them couldn't leave because they were elderly or older and didn't essentially want to leave their home in Germany or Austria, for example. And those were people who are not technically useful. But that doesn't mean that there was a silver lining to the Holocaust because old people were massacred because they didn't have the utility that's being described as callus forming as a part of it, an experience of unimaginable trauma. It's disgusting.
And no one would ever make a point of compelling people when they teach about the Holocaust to talk about those things that happened during the Holocaust that could have been of personal benefit to the survivors of the Holocaust. No one would ever even contemplate doing that. Part of the reason why the ideologues happen to be non-historian, but even if they were historians, you can still be an ideologue. Think it's important that this be taught in the context of slavery is to obscure the nature of what being enslaved was. I mean, that is the important thing here. It's not just an offhand thing. It is to make it as if this was not a totally non-consensual, a total debasement of an enslaved person's humanity, at least from the context of the slave owners. It is to obscure the relationship here. I mean, that's all that it is. You could make the same argument with the Holocaust. They met each other in Dachau, and fortunately, they were both, and they went on to have a great family. You would never you never talk about the personal benefits that came out of other horrific things. But it is so important for them to talk about the skills that presumably were learned in the context of slavery, because they wanted to make that dynamic sound less one-sided than it is.
Yeah.
And there is an ideology that is even deeper than just sort of mitigating the horrors of slavery. It is to obscure the dynamic that's going on there too.